Okay, so we have Irja Straus presenting today. After her adventure in product management, Irja has gone back to her first love, software testing. She's currently a senior quality control analyst and team leader in InfoBip. She likes to learn the human and business side of software, experiment with products to investigate risks, and advocate bugs that matter. Software testing is what she loves to do, and she never designed the same test strategy twice in her 11-year career. So we do have facilitation at the end, just a quick reminder. And Irja, take it away.
Are you recording?
Thank you.
Yes.
We are recording.
Great, thank you.
So, hello everyone. Well, let me start first with one really rhetorical question. But have you ever seen a unicorn? And well, of course, you haven't seen a real unicorn, neither did I. But maybe you just tried to chase one in your life. Because I have to admit, I tried to catch one for some time in my life, but as every other story about hunting unicorns ends up and turned out to be something else, a horse or a human in disguise, as this picture suggests. But let me, but I have to admit that I tried, but before you actually pronounce me totally crazy, let me just try to introduce myself and explain what was the unicorn I actually chased in my life, and what was the unicorn that brought me here today to talk about testing when the product is yet to be defined. As I said, my name is Irja, and this is my first cast, obviously, and I have a huge stage fright, even I'm at my home. And before becoming a tester again, I worked for a couple of years as a business analyst and a product manager. And as much as I tried to write perfect specification that will address all the right problems, that just didn't happen. In most of the cases, or it was really, really hard for me to achieve it in some given time, especially in this context of the competitive and fast-growing market. So I realized that basically those perfect requirements and chasing those were my unicorns, something that I highly desired, but it was impossible to achieve, just like a myth. And those requirements are not things or some documents that should be taken for granted. Even they come to us in such form, and most of the times. I realized that those documents are more basically conversation starter. Some conversations that we actually need to have to understand what makes our product good and what actually threatens its goodness. During another type of conversation with my friend, we actually concluded one thing that also made sense to me. We testers have one thing in common. We all have some kind of an inside dragon to train and learn from this dragon. And this dragon has actually many sides and sees many perspectives, just as this one. Still, the content of these sides and these perspectives and how we got them makes us a little bit different one from each other. After all, we all come and basically learn from different experiences. And incorporating those different technical, but also social skills is exactly what makes this job basically the most beautiful in the world, for me personally. I'm not sure about you. And my dragon actually got trained a lot from dog fooding. And let me tell you first what dog fooding is. Dog fooding is basically when organization uses its own product. And there is one little secret about dog fooding. Eating my own dog food was actually the most rewarding when my food was, well, disgusting. But let me show you some, the first dog food example. Of course, this disgusting one. This one I like to call when business requirement was not very clear or understandable at first, as you can see from this attached illustration. It goes under some working name I call when the requirement is sometimes not even clear to me who wrote it. So first, let me give a little bit of context of this situation. We redesigned the product, but did not emphasize that this product is used to store and segment a lot of data. And this about persons. And this key information for each person was the contact information. And we needed this information to be unique. So we needed to have some kind of a system constraint. And this means we had to limit the entry of the duplicated data. Since the data coming into our system was not always adequate, we had to devise some kind of a mechanism to address those duplicates. And hence, we introduced a feature that will resolve them automatically. I will admit that sometimes this algorithm, and actually to understand what happened in the particular situations, I needed the pen and paper. So basically this automatic became automagic for my clients, and without the possibility for them to recover from this action, it actually became a nightmare. But this was just one of the problems. The next one was the name choice. Although ballot seems like a logical choice, but it's not the happiest one in this context of the product that contains information about people, because you get a following result: invalid people. And in this case, this is really not a really okay thing to say here. Let's move on to the last, but not the least dog biscuit I brought today. With this new functionality, we also introduced a new term to our product language. As much as the term duplicate seems straightforward, it was not entirely clear what was duplicate. Is it a name? Is it a surname? Is it a phone number or email or some combination of those? So I haven't helped my customers here with answering that question. So again, they had to ask us. So these learnings from my product manager, Dragon, and analysis of these problems and their causal relationship, together with other learnings, show me some way of some good practices that I do now when testing. But to jumpstart with some of those discussions, here are some useful questions, useful heuristics that basically were really easy to remember and help me to address this particular situations I shared before. So show me the data. It's really easy to remember, but of course I will not attack somebody and ask them this question in such an aggressive way. But it was really easy to remember and drive me into direction to find out what is the priority, what is the data we are basing our product decisions on, and how much testing I will invest there. Next thing was a really good joke. You all probably, sorry, wrong slide. Next thing is when we have a situation when users are actually in the danger that they will fail to recover from some situation, then most likely we have a missing feature. This is really useful when actions are unrecoverable, like this resolving of duplicated data that became automagic was. The undo action in that case would really help my users to recover. But I failed. I didn't predict that. Okay, the next one is really a good one. I realized that when I explained this feature to my team, they basically looked at me with all the question marks over their head. So I realized that if I share something and explaining in a room full of smart people and they started to ask me a question, then probably this feature is really worth a challenge. And it's really a risk to build it. So I should think twice. And to put all of those questions and to give it a little bit of structure, we actually came up with a structured review for the requirements we are doing today. That basically consists of few different angles we'll look. So first angle is that enables our review to become discussions is to understand all of the business rules and how system is actually behaving. Is this flow easy to follow, and does it lead our users to a successful task completion? Okay, be able to understand that basically the requirement has to be clear in the first place, because nobody likes to do things twice because we didn't understood each other, obviously. And this also helps us to deliver much faster because we have the shortened communication loops. So it's always good to be on the same page and understand what we are building. Third one is be able to use the customer analytics in testing. For example, we will grasp into the data about the usage and behavior of our users and use this data to understand the real use cases better and to understand what is actually driving those business decisions. Remember that, show me the data. This is the part where it comes into the game. Fourth, it's about the consistency, of course. Well, we really want to mitigate reinventing the wheel and to see, are we introducing consistent behaviors across the system? Or is there a risk of some actions and rules being in a conflict between each other? But note one thing, that inconsistencies are not necessarily a problem. They are really okay when we deliberately decide we want to innovate and try something new. And there is a reasoning and metric that will prove that success of the information. But in order to recognize that, I really needed to know all of the consistencies first to ask this question about the inconsistency itself. And last but not the least, the least is, of course, risk assessment that goes into direction of product and project risk assessment. I will not go into details, but I will just emphasize the importance of having recognizing the project risks in cases when many teams are basically needed to deliver one customer value. In those cases, it's really important for me to recognize all of the people we need on board because of misalignment with the priorities, timelines, and where our services and where our teams basically integrate. Those are points I really want to know about. Okay, let's go into another example. This is the second example I have for today. This example is called Dude, Where is My Data? Because this situation really reminded me of this movie from, I don't know, 20 years ago or something like that. Well, for a few months after we launched to the market, feedback came back from users and they were asking, where is the ability to export the data? Well, we didn't anticipate where we will put this feature of exporting the data. Hence, I had a great idea. A very simple one. We will add an option to this nice main screen. But I made a mistake. It was not very easy for users to find this option because it was hidden behind the ellipses. And it wasn't intuitive to find it. I was not trying to say that ellipsis is the problem and problematic pattern in application, not at all. But the problem is that we didn't have this pattern before, and we just introduced it. And we had a bit longer learning curve within our users. Let's move on because this is not everything. When they found the option, they expected, I would expect it to be, okay, I will click and download, but this is not how it went. It went a little bit differently. Instead, we made a promise and we prompted them with one notification that we will inform them when download and export will be ready for download. And so they waited, and we failed to inform them and set the expectations, how long they will wait. And it was pretty disconnected flow. So we decided to surprise them with another pop-up message and another notification. And finally, after the fourth click, they actually got to their data. That task was really cumbersome. And yeah, probably every one of you asks the question why we made this bad. Well, not we, I did. Or why I made those bad decisions. Well, basically, I didn't ask every questions I could ask, or I didn't allow other people to ask those questions. But what were those questions that will probably help me with this resolving these problems? This is the joke I actually mentioned. I forgot that this joke comes now in this slide. Well, if it's easy to slip away, there should be an emergency exit. How to put it? I would really feel bad if I didn't had an emergency. Sorry, I mixed. I'm looking at it. Sorry. User experience. I'm talking about user experience first. Basically, UX is like a joke because if I need to explain it much, then it's a pretty bad one. And we needed to explain our new term we introduced in our feature, which we called resolve automatically. Nobody knew what that means. And if we used a name called merge for a feature that is already familiar on Google Contacts, which is used by like half of the world, we would probably do much better because people will probably have some familiarity with this term called merge. But we decided the other way. Anyway, another question and another thing I learned is that when we have this easy to slip action, there should be some sort of a safety zone, some sort of a control, because it's like in physical spaces. If I were in a huge mall with many people, I would really feel uncomfortable without some exit near me or knowing how to reach the exit. Because it's really important for users to provide two things, either undo or confirmation, so they can control those actions and not slip away so easily. A third one question or conversation starter I learned is that in the example of the expert, we missed to anticipate the need for a user to have this clear expectation of how long some action will actually last. So to provide them a visible status and the progress. Asking this kind of a question at that point would probably help me to realize that we need to give some timely feedback and provide this system visibility and mitigate this client's confusion, waiting, and surprises. They even loaded our support a couple of times with the question, where is their data? And I don't blame them. Okay, to give it a little bit of a structure, when reviewing design or user experience, we have a few angles we can look at. First one is testing on some realistic and complex client use cases. It's really easy to fit some design with some simple data sets, but game totally changes where you test it under real conditions, not the average ones. Because we learned today that average user does not exist. So keep it real, know your clients, and anticipate that in design. This is what I learned. Second one is in checking layouts and elements. We always try to find if this layout is basically functional or the user interface is cluttered with a lot of information, a lot of repetition, or are those elements placed logically? Will I find the call to action on the expected place on every page, or I will be surprised and I will have to spend 3 seconds to find it? Those are the things that we are looking at here. Also, does the layout basically support our customers who are writing from the right to left? This is also one important thing in our context to look at. When it comes to user experience and intuitiveness, it's mostly about the psychology of the users, and do they perceive our product as engaging? Is it easy for them? Is it obvious where they will go next? Is our customer journey broken in any way? And what can we do about it? Fourth is patterns familiarity. Except this easiness of use, there is also this resemblance. What I mean here is that the main goal of this pattern's consistency is to avoid reinventing the wheel and apply well-known patterns to shorten the learning curve. And that will hopefully help to increase the adoption among our users. If they know how to use it, they will use it faster. Last but not the least was wording and finding the appropriate voice and clarity of content. Remember this example I had in Valid People, not so appropriate. It's important to have the informative content, but understandable and appropriate for our audience. And our audiences were enterprises and their employees, and they use their product to interact with their own customers. So our voice of the product and words of choice should talk to them, should talk to the businesses, not to everyday consumers. Okay, but even to start to ask those questions and discover the risk and have this impact on how products are created, there were some challenges along the way. First one, well, the biggest challenge was actually find out what works for my company, not for me, I'm not important, but for my stakeholders, and how to incorporate all of those learnings from my dragon, remember, with good practices I learned from our profession, but also from others. The approach that basically has proven successful is listening before talking. So I first had to meet the people, learn their motivation, learn their goals. When I say people, I mean stakeholders and colleagues I work with, developers, designers, product managers, and also building the relationships with them because then we established a much better collaboration. We had a really good feedback loop in those cases. Next was to get to know the clients better and their user personas, because each user persona has different goals, different set of tasks to complete, and they are not the same. Remember, again, there is no average user. I really like that sentence from today's keynote. For me, it was really essential to understand all of those differences and what's important to them, and find those important quality characteristics for my clients, for my users, because there could be many. All of that enabled me kind of to talk in their own language when I reported my findings, and made this feedback when I start speaking and talking to them. This feedback was more relevant and much more acceptable to whom it concerns. To give you like an example, I will not explain them what are the oracles in testing or mention the term, but I will just mention our competitor and they or some legal thing like GDPR and use that in my argumentation, and things will be resolved much faster in that case. Okay. At the very end, there will just maybe a few things I will share that were my takeaways along the way. First one was actually, yeah, I reinvented the wheel and realized that testing became much before than even a single line of code is written, and how challenging was to figure out that for me. Second, but maybe most interesting thing I basically learned was the realization why I failed to chase my unicorn. My unicorn was creating like perfect requirements, creating this perfect product, and I failed. Simply, I didn't ask or considered all the questions we should ask because everybody asks themselves a different questions and is guided by different set of emotions and ways of we think. For example, product managers ask themselves, what is the most important problem to solve for our customers? Because this is the problem I wanted to solve as soon as possible when I was a product manager. At the same time, developers and designers were looking for an answer on how to solve that. While we, and including me as a tester now, I will bring this what can go wrong, how this product can fail to the table. So we all ask about the risk and the consequences, and we will try to give our own perspective and how to mitigate the potential problem. And all of us together here, people I mentioned, we all make a successful thing. And all of those experiences of mine, what I had as a product, as a business analyst, and as a tester, actually showed me the power of each skill set. And I really, really trained my dragon from that dog fooding, especially from the most disgusting samples. So keep them up and learn from them as well. That would be my message for this day or night. So thank you for keeping up with this.
Thank you so much, Irja. Your passion for testing is very clear and your stories are great. Are there questions?
People tell me that.
So who has questions? Okay, well, Irja, how did you decide to make the leap back into testing? Just personal question.
If I can go with that one. I love that question. Basically, it was really simple. I realized how it went. I worked as business analyst and product for 5-6 years, something like that. And I realized I'm becoming more and more miserable. And then I remember when was the last time I was happy. And I remember last time I was happy when I was testing something. And the second thing is that I never got out of testing. I still went on meetups. I still kind of tried to keep up. And I still socialize with testers. First thing I did when I joined the company, I did some improvements for the colleagues in the testing team. We collaborated, and yeah, it was like, what am I doing here? Let's go back and do things what I love the most. And fun fact is that I basically joined the testing team in the same company. And the first product I was working, was the product I actually built. And that was like really awful experience when you look something you created, you loved a month ago, and you kind of swore and sold it to clients, and then this is shit. Excuse me. Doesn't matter. But yeah, it was not all bad, but you started to look for bad things. And yeah, so.
Excellent.
Bit longer answer.
Bailey has a question for you.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, because you've been in all these different roles, like you got a lot of really great experiences. Have you been able to kind of get like the different roles on your team right now to start thinking about those things as well? So it's not just you thinking about them. Like, have you been able to kind of like train the developers to think a little bit more in the testing mindset, or like product to think a bit more on the testing mindset?
I try, but honestly, I think it's hardest to kind of teach people near you. It's the hardest. I can teach them by try to impact them, giving the example by pairing. We pair a lot with product managers, designers, and developers. So yes, I'm trying. I think I have some little bit of success, but I'm totally disappointed with myself because they're not enthusiastic as I am.